Welcome to Forbidden Desires channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. My name is Isabella and I've always been the life of the party, especially when it comes to dance. There's something magical about the way music and movement intertwine, creating a world where every step tells a story. I run a small dance studio in the heart of our bustling city where I teach everything from ballet to hip-hop. It's my sanctuary, my escape, and my livelihood. My students, ranging from tiny tots in tutus to adults seeking solace in salsa, fill the space with laughter, energy, and the occasional misstep. My husband Jack is a software developer, often buried in his work but always supportive of my passion. He's the quiet to my chaos, the calm to my storm. We've built a life together that from the outside looks like a perfect dance routine. Every step in sync. Every move anticipated. We share our home with Leo, our loyal and energetic German Shepherd, who has been with us since he was a puppy. Leo, with his boundless energy, has been our constant companion, the silent witness to our life's rhythm. Life was good, or so I thought, until one evening when the routine of our daily life took a turn into the unexpected. It was a Thursday, not particularly memorable, just another day where the sun set over the city, casting long shadows through our living room windows. Jack was working late as usual, his office, a fortress of solitude where he wrestled with code and deadlines. I had just finished a particularly grueling session with my advanced ballet class, my body aching but my spirits soaring from the beauty of their performance. I decided to surprise Jack with dinner, something we hadn't done in a while. Kitchen was filled with the aroma of garlic and rosemary, the sizzle of steak in the pan, and the promise of a quiet evening together. Leo, sensing the change in routine, was unusually restless, pacing back and forth, his tail wagging with an intensity that seemed almost nervous. As I set the table, my phone buzzed with a message from Jack: running late, don't wait up. Disappointment washed over me, but I pushed it aside, focusing instead on the meal. I texted back, "No worries, I'll keep it warm for you." The night deepened, and the city outside our windows began to quiet down, the usual cacophony of urban life softening into a distant hum. I sat at the table alone with Leo by my side, his head resting on my lap, his eyes full of unspoken questions. The food grew cold, the candles flickered, and my mind wandered. Then the unexpected happened. Leo's ears perked up, and he dashed to the front door, barking with an urgency that was uncharacteristic. I followed him, puzzled. The door was locked, but Leo's behavior suggested someone was there. I peered through the peephole, expecting perhaps a neighbor or a delivery, but saw nothing. Turning back to the living room, my eyes caught sight of Jack's laptop left open on the coffee table. A notification blinked on the screen, a message from someone named L. My heart skipped a beat as I approached curiosity, battling with a sense of intrusion. The message was simple: "Can't wait to see you again." My world, which had been spinning in its predictable orbit, suddenly felt like it was tilting off its axis. The routine dance of life had indeed stepped into a forbidden rhythm, one I hadn't anticipated, one that promised to change everything. But what happens when the routine dance of life steps into a forbidden rhythm? The day started like any other. Jack left for work early, leaving me with Leo and the quiet of our home. I had a full schedule at the studio, but a sudden cancellation left me with an unexpected free afternoon. Deciding to use the time productively, I headed to the office to catch up on administrative work. Leo, as always, accompanied me, his tail wagging with the joy of an impromptu adventure. The studio, the atmosphere was serene, the only sounds being the soft hum of the air conditioning and Leo's occasional playful bark. I settled into my office, a small cozy corner with a large window overlooking the city. Paperwork was mundane, but it needed to be done. Leo lay at my feet, his warmth comforting in the cool office. As I sifted through invoices and schedules, my mind kept drifting back till last night. The message from L on Jack's laptop haunted me. Who was this person? And why was Jack meeting them? Questions swirled in my head, each one more unsettling than the last. I tried to focus on work, but the unease was palpable, like a shadow cast over my thoughts. The phone on my desk buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Jack. "Hey, can we talk when I get home tonight?" My heart sank. This wasn't just a simple request. It felt like a prelude to something significant, something that could alter the course of our lives. I replied with a simple yes, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed. Leo, sensing my distress, nuzzled his head into my lap, his eyes full of concern. I stroked his fur, finding some solace in his presence. The studio, usually a place of joy and creativity, now felt like a stage set for a drama. I wasn't prepared to perform it. The afternoon dragged on, each minute stretching into an eternity. I tried to immerse myself in the work, but my thoughts were a relentless tide, pulling me back to the mystery of Elle and the potential revelations that awaited me at home. By the time I decided to leave, the sun was beginning its descent, casting long shadows across the city. Leo and I walked back to our car, the air thick with the anticipation of what was to come. The drive home was silent, save for the soft hum of the engine and Leo's occasional line, as if he too felt the tension in the air. Once home, I busied myself with mundane tasks, anything to distract from the impending conversation. I fed Leo, watered the plants, and even rearranged some furniture, all while my mind raced with scenarios. Finally, the sound of Jack's key in the lock made my heart leap into my throat. He entered, his face unreadable, his eyes avoiding mine. The air was charged with unspoken words, the weight of the unknown pressing down on us. "Hey," he said, his voice low, almost hesitant. "Can we sit down?" We moved to the living room, the same room where I had seen that message. Leo followed his tail, no longer wagging his demeanor, mirroring the gravity of the moment. Jack sat across from me. His hands clasped, his gaze finally meeting mine. "I need tell you something." He began, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying a storm of emotions. "I've been seeing someone else." The words hit me like a physical blow. The air knocked out of me, despite the suspicion. Hearing it confirmed was like a knife twisting in my heart. Leo whimpered softly, as if he too felt the fracture in our family. "It's not what you think." Jack continued, his voice now tinged with desperation. "It's not an affair in the traditional sense. I've been meeting with a therapist, someone named Charlotte. L stands for Charlotte." The revelation was a mix of relief and confusion. Not an affair, but why the secrecy, why the need for such clandestine meetings? I've been struggling. "Isabella," he confessed, "with work, with us, with everything. I didn't want to burden you with my issues. Charlotte has been helping me sort through my thoughts, my feelings. I should have told you, but I was afraid of how you'd react." The room felt colder, the shadows longer. The dance of our life together had indeed stepped into a forbidden rhythm, but not in the way I had feared. Yet the breach of trust was palpable, the silence between us heavy with the weight of unspoken questions and unresolved emotions. But what happens when comfort turns into something more unsettling? I thought to myself, looking at Jack, seeing him not just as my husband but as a man grappling with his own demons. The dance of our marriage had taken an unexpected turn, and now we had to find a new rhythm, one that could accommodate the truth and the healing we both needed. As I worked, Leo's playful demeanor turned into something more intimate. He began to nozzle against my leg, his behavior shifting from playful to something I couldn't quite understand. In a moment of weakness, perhaps driven by loneliness or the thrill of the forbidden, I allowed Leo's affection to escalate. What started as an innocent interaction quickly spiraled into an act of infidelity that I never imagined possible. Quiet office corner, once a sanctuary of productivity, became the scene of my deepest betrayal. The guilt was immediate and overwhelming. I pushed Leo away, my heart pounding in my C*******T, my mind racing with the implications of what had just occurred. I stood up, my legs shaky, and walked to the window, staring out at the city below but seeing nothing. The weight of my actions felt like a physical burden, pressing down on my shoulders, making it hard to breathe. I turned back to Leo, who sat there, his tail no longer wagging, his eyes full of confusion and perhaps hurt. I whispered an apology, knowing it was inadequate for the breach of trust, not just with Jack but with our pet, our family member. The rest of the afternoon was a blur. I tried to focus on work, but my thoughts were a tangled mess of guilt, confusion, and fear. How could I have let this happen? What did it say about me about her marriage? Questions were relentless, each one more damning than the last. When I finally locked up the studio and headed home, the drive was silent, the radio off my mind replaying the scene over and over. Leo sat in the back unusually quiet, his presence a constant reminder of my lapse and judgment. Once home, I avoided Jack's gaze, the guilt making it impossible to look him in the eye. Dinner was a quiet affair, the food tasteless, the conversation stilted. Jack sensed something was off, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him. How does one confess to such a betrayal? That night I lay in bed, Jack asleep beside me, his breathing steady and calm, a stark contrast to the storm inside me. Leo was on the floor, his usual spot at the foot of our bed, but tonight it felt like a chasm had opened between us. The next morning I woke up with a resolve to confront what had happened, to understand it, to perhaps find a way to forgive myself. I decided to speak to someone, a therapist, not Charlotte, but someone who could help me navigate through this maze of emotions. I made the call from the kitchen. Jack already at work, Leo watching me with those knowing eyes. The appointment was set for the following day. I needed to understand why I had crossed that line, what had driven me to such an act. The day at the studio was mechanical. I went through the motions of teaching, my heart not in it, my mind elsewhere. My students noticed their usual enthusiasm, dimmed by my distracted demeanor. After class, I sat alone in my office, the weight of my secret pressing down on me. Leo, sensing my distress, came over, his head resting on my lap, his eyes full of concern. I stroked his fur, whispering promises to myself and to him that I would make things right. Somehow the therapy session was intense. I poured out my guilt, my confusion, my fear of losing everything I held dear. The therapist listened, her face a mask of professional concern. She spoke of loneliness, of the human need for connection, and how in moments of vulnerability boundaries can blur. "Isabella," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "what happened with Leo isn't about him. It's about you, about your needs, your fears, and the state of your marriage. It's a symptom, not the disease." Her words were a balm but also a mirror reflecting back the parts of myself I was afraid to face. I left the session with homework to talk to Jack, to be honest about my feelings, my loneliness, and yes, about Leo. That evening I prepared dinner with a heavy heart, each chop of the knife a reminder of the conversation to come. Jack came home, his face lighting up at the sight of the meal, unaware of the storm brewing within me. We sat down, the silence between us, filled with unspoken words. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly as I reached across the table to touch his Jack. "There's something I need to tell you." I started, my voice barely above a whisper. "Something happened at the studio yesterday, something I deeply regret." His face changed, concern etching lines into his forehead. "What is it, Isabella?" I told him everything, the words tumbling out in a rush, my eyes unable to meet his. The silence that followed was deafening. Jack's face was unreadable, his emotions hidden behind a mask of shock. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "I don't know what to say, Isabella. I need some time to process this." The night stretched on the air, thick with tension. I lay awake listening to Jack's uneven breathing, wondering if this was the beginning of the end or a painful step towards healing. How does one recover from crossing a line that should never have been approached? The answer, I realized, lay in the painful journey of honesty, forgiveness, and perhaps a dance of reconciliation that neither of us knew the steps to. Yet the aftermath was immediate and overwhelming. Guilt washed over me like a tidal wave. I couldn't focus on anything else. The rest of the day passed in a blur, my mind replaying the incident over and over. When Jack came home, I was a shell of my usual self, my laughter replaced by a forced smile. Leo, sensing the change, stayed close, his presence now a constant reminder of my indiscretion. I tried to act normal to engage in our usual evening routine, but every touch, every look from Jack felt like an accusation. The weight of my secret was crushing, and the thought of confessing was both terrifying and necessary. Dinner was a silent affair. Clicking of cutlery against plates was the only sound. Each bite of food tasting like ash in my mouth. Jack, perhaps sensing the tension, tried to make conversation, but his words felt distant, as if they were coming from another room. I nodded, smiled, but my heart wasn't in it. My mind was elsewhere, wrestling with the enormity of what I had done. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Jack sat on the couch, his usual spot, and I took the armchair, needing the physical distance to gather my thoughts. Leo lay at my feet, his eyes following me with a mix of confusion and concern. "Isabella, you've been quiet all evening," Jack said, his voice gentle, probing, "Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, the air feeling thick and heavy. "Jack, there's something I need to tell you." I started, my voice barely above a whisper. "Something happened at the studio yesterday, something I deeply regret." His face changed, concern etching lines into his forehead. "What is it?" "Isabella?" I told him everything, the words tumbling out in a rush, my eyes unable to meet his. The silence that followed was deafening. Jack's face was unreadable, his emotions hidden behind a mask of shock. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, "Don't know what to say. Isabella, I need some time to process this." The night stretched on the air, thick with tension. I lay awake listening to Jack's uneven breathing, wondering if this was the beginning of the end or a painful step towards healing. The next morning the house was quiet, too quiet. Jack had left early for work, leaving a note on the kitchen counter. "I need some space to think it." Read the words, simple but loaded with implications. Leo, sensing the shift in our household, was unusually subdued, his tail not wagging with its usual vigor. I went through the motions of my morning routine, but every step felt heavy, as if I were walking through quicksand. The studio was my sanctuary, but today it felt like a stage where I had to perform the role of the composed dance instructor. All while my personal life crumbled behind the curtain. Classes were mechanical, I taught. I corrected. I encouraged, but my heart wasn't in it. My students, perceptive as they are, noticed the change. Their usual enthusiasm was dimmed by my distracted demeanor. After the last class, I sat alone in my office, the weight of my secret pressing down on me. Leo, sensing my distress, came over, his head resting on my lap, his eyes full of concern. I stroked his fur, whispering promises to myself and to him that I would make things right. Somehow the therapy session was intense. I poured out my guilt, my confusion, my fear of losing everything I held dear. The therapist listened, her face a mask of professional concern. She spoke of loneliness, of the human need for connection, and how in moments of vulnerability boundaries can blur. "Isabella," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "what happened with Leo isn't about him. It's about you, about your needs, your fears, and the state of your marriage. It's a symptom, not the disease." Her words were a balm but also a mirror reflecting back the parts of myself I was afraid to face. I left the session with homework to talk to Jack, to be honest about my feelings, my loneliness, and yes, about Leo. That evening I prepared dinner with a heavy heart, each chop of the knife a reminder of the conversation to come. Jack came home, his face lighting up at the sight of the meal, unaware of the storm brewing within me. We sat down, the silence between us, filled with unspoken words. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly as I reached across the table to touch his Jack. "There's something I need to tell you." I started, my voice barely above a whisper. "Something happened at the studio yesterday, something I deeply regret." His face changed, concern etching lines into his forehead. "What is it?" "Isabella?" I told him everything, the words tumbling out in a rush, my eyes unable to meet his. The silence that followed was deafening. Jack's face was unreadable, his emotions hidden behind a mask of shock. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, "Don't know what to say. Isabella, I need some time to process this." the night stretched on the air thick with tension. I lay awake, listening to Jack's uneven breathing, wondering if this was the beginning of the end or a painful step towards healing. How does one recover from crossing a line that should never have been approached? The answer, I realized, lay in the painful journey of honesty, forgiveness, and perhaps a dance of reconciliation that neither of us knew. The steps to yet cliffhanger asterisk. Will Isabella find the courage to confess, or will the secret consume her? I could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on me as I sat there, my heart pounding in my C********, each beat echoing the gravity of the moment. Jack's eyes, usually so full of warmth, now held a storm of confusion and hurt. Leo, sensing the tension, lay still, his head still on my lap, his presence both a comfort and a painful reminder. Isabella, Jack's voice was a whisper strained with emotion. "Two don't know what to say." I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat, making it difficult to speak. "I know, Jack, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. It was a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment that I deeply regret." He looked away, his jaw clenched, the muscles in his neck tight. "How could you? Isabella with Leo?" Our Leo tears welled up in my eyes, not just for the betrayal of our marriage, but for the innocence of Leo, caught in the crossfire of human emotions. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice breaking. I was alone, feeling disconnected, and in that moment I made a terrible mistake. I've been to therapy trying to understand why I did what I did, but nothing justifies it. Jack stood up abruptly, pacing the room, his hands running through his hair. "I've been struggling too. Isabella, with work, with us, with everything. I thought Charlotte was helping me sort through my issues, but now this changes everything." "I know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "and I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I just needed to be honest with you, to not let this secret fester between us." He stopped pacing, turning to face me with eyes that seemed to search my soul. "Do you love me? Isabella, do you still want this marriage?" Question hit me like a physical blow. "Yes, Jack, I do love you more than anything. I want to fix this, to find a way back to us. But I understand if you need time, if you need space." He nodded slowly, his gaze dropping to Leo, who now looked between us, his tail giving a tentative wag. "And what about Leo? How do we move forward with him?" I reached down, stroking Leo's fur, feeling the warmth of his body under my touch. "Leo is innocent in all this. He's our family. Jack, we need to ensure he's not affected by our issues. We need to show him love, not confusion or blame." Jack sighed, a sound heavy with the weight of our situation. "I need to think. Isabella, I need to figure out what I feel, what I want. This isn't just about forgiveness. It's about trust, about understanding." "I know," I whispered the reality of the situation, "settling in, take all the time you need. I'll be here working on myself, on us. If you decide there's an USS to work on." He walked towards the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "I'll stay at a hotel tonight. I need some space." The door closed softly behind him, leaving me in the quiet of our home. The silence. Now a deafening roar. Leo looked up at me, his eyes full of questions. I couldn't answer. I pulled him close, his warmth a small comfort in the vast emptiness of the room. The night stretched on each tick of the clock, a reminder of the time passing, of the life we had built together, now hanging in the balance. I lay in our bed alone, the space beside me cold and empty, mirroring the void in my heart. As dawn broke, casting a soft light through the curtains, I knew the journey ahead would be fraught with pain, with moments of doubt and despair. But within me a resolve was forming. A determination to face the consequences of my actions, to seek redemption not just for myself but for our marriage. For Leo, for the life we had envisioned together. The question remained like a shadow over our future. What will be the consequence of Kay's confession? Would it be the end of us, or the beginning of a painful yet hopeful reconciliation? The answer lay in the days to come, in the choices we would make, in the dance of forgiveness and healing. We had yet to learn. The silence that followed my confession was deafening. Jack stood up his chair, scraping against the floor, a sound that seemed to echo through our now fragile life. He walked out of the room, leaving me with Leo, who looked up at me with those innocent, unknowing eyes. The next few days were a blur of discussions, tears, and therapy sessions. Jack, though hurt, chose to stay his love for me. Battling with the betrayal he felt, we decided to seek help both individually and as a couple. The journey was long, filled with moments of doubt and pain, but also with steps towards forgiveness and understanding. Leo remained a part of our lives, his presence now a symbol of our complex journey. The first therapy session was like walking into a storm. The therapist, Dr. Ellis, had a calm demeanor that contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside me. Jack sat beside me, his body language closed off, his eyes avoiding mine. Isabella, Jack, Dr. Ellis began, her voice soothing yet firm. We're here to navigate through this together. Let's start by understanding what each of you is feeling. I took a deep breath, the weight of my actions pressing down on me. I feel ashamed. I admit it, my voice barely above a whisper. I betrayed Jack's trust, and I've hurt Leo in ways I can't even begin to fathom. I'm struggling to forgive myself. Jack's gaze finally met mine, his eyes filled with a mix of pain and confusion. I'm angry, he said, his voice cracking. I'm hurt and I'm scared. I don't know if I can trust you again. Isabella and Leo, he's just a beautiful dog, but he's part of our family. How do we even begin to explain this to him? Dr. Ellis nodded, her expression one of understanding. It's important to recognize that Leo, while not understanding the complexities of human emotions, does pick up on the atmosphere and the changes in your relationship. His behavior might reflect the tension he senses. The sessions continued, each one peeling back layers of our relationship, exposing vulnerabilities and past grievances. Jack spoke of his feelings of isolation at work, how he felt he was losing me to my passion for dance. I shared my loneliness, the feeling of being secondary to his career, and how that loneliness led to my lapse in judgment. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Jack and I sat in our living room, the space between us filled with the echoes of our confessions. Leo lay at our feet, his head moving back and forth between us as if trying to understand. I've been thinking. Jack started, his voice hesitant, about what you said about feeling alone. I didn't realize how much my work was affecting us. I'm sorry for that. Isabella. I reached out, my hand trembling as it found his, and I'm sorry for not seeing your struggles, for not being there when you needed me. We both made mistakes. Jack, but I want to make this right if you'll let me. He looked at me, his eyes softening. I want to try, Isabella, but it's going to take time. We need to rebuild, not just for us but for Leo. 3. He deserves a stable home. The days turned into weeks, and slowly we began to dance a new rhythm. It wasn't the carefree dance of our early days, but a cautious, deliberate one, each step taken with care. We introduced new routines into our life, like weekly date nights where we left our phones behind, focusing solely on each other. Leo, ever the loyal companion, seemed to sense the shift. His tail wagged more freely, his playful barks returning, signaling a return to some semblance of normalcy. We made sure to include him in our healing process, taking long walks together, playing fetch in the park, ensuring he felt the love and stability he deserved. One Saturday, as we sat in the park watching Leo chase after Frisbee, Jack turned to me. I've been talking to Charlotte, my therapist, about us. She suggested we might benefit from a couples retreat, something to help us reconnect. The idea was daunting yet hopeful. I like that, I said, feeling a flicker of optimism. Maybe it's what we need to find our way back to each other. The retreat was set in a serene mountain lodge, far from the city's noise. The environment was designed for introspection and reconnection. We participated in workshops on communication, trust exercises, and even dance therapy, which felt like a poetic return to our roots. During one session, as we moved through the steps of a slow waltz, Jack whispered, I'm starting to see you again. Isabella, the woman I fell in love with, tears welled up in my eyes not just from the beauty of the moment, but from the realization that perhaps we could mend what was broken. I'm here. Jack, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. The retreat ended and we returned home with a renewed commitment to each other. However, the journey was far from over. There were still moments of doubt, times when the shadow of my betrayal loomed large, but we were learning to talk through these moments to address them head-on, rather than letting them fester. One evening, as we sat on our porch watching the sunset, Jack took my hand. I've decided something. Isabella, I want to move forward not just for us, but for Leo. He's been our anchor through the storm. I squeezed his hand, my heart swelling with a mix of relief and gratitude. Thank you, Jack, for giving us another chance. Leo, hearing his name trotted over his tail, wagging his eyes bright with the simple joy of being with his family. In that moment, I realized that our dance of life, though it had stepped into a forbidden rhythm, was now finding its way back to harmony. Cliffhanger asterisk, can a relationship survive such a profound betrayal? Or will the dance of life lead them to new partners? My story ends here. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks for listening and see you in the next videos.